Yes, Virginia, Star Trek's always had women fans and leaders and saviors. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 422. Yeah. With me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47. And yes, the heart of your portal to the big multi-day edition of the Geek Nation Tours LA to Vegas location film sites tour with your fellow Trek fans, living it out live, the real experience, the real deal multi-day. Not done this in 10 years, all for the 60th anniversary. Please give us a look at geeknationtours.com or come over and check it out with a link through my site at larrynemecek.com, where, yes, if a multi-day tour is not your thing, you can still get a one-day Trekland Treks here in Southern California. We customize it for you in advance. I handle everything for you. It's an incredible, awesome, wonderful day. Get in touch with me. Find out that we have wonderful winters here in Southern California. So, time of year is almost no option. It's going to be a big year celebrating the 60th. And we're looking forward to the future. I do want to let everybody know about the Geek Nation tour coming back for the 60th anniversary. If you're wanting to make a big plan, make a big deal, it'll be in August, the week before Vegas convention. Although you don't have to go to the convention. You can just ride with us for those 5 days. Hey, that's a big deal. Right now, I want to give a shout out to Doug Drexler. I haven't checked up. I know they crossed over 50% early last evening on his bio documentary. Doug is not just a hoot. He has lived an awful lot of history in an awful lot of venues, in Trek and out of Trek, around some of your favorite actors, some of your favorite pop culture genre folks. He has history that goes back to New York City with the early Trek days. He's just an incredible guy. And he's put in some licks of life, I would say, too, along the way. And I'm so excited for his memoir to be coming next spring, and just as a serendipity project, this documentary. So give it a look if you can it's actually at Kickstarter. Look up Doug Drexler Kickstarter, you'll get there, or check out his page. I do want to say that I also want to do an RIP this week, someone that was very close to me. I did a lot of work with about 15 years ago, in the early years of the fallow times, after Star Trek had gone away and there was a movie coming, but no one knew what it was about because they were being old and weird and mysterious and far away. And we were all just trying to scramble our Star Trek together. And a guy who had begun life as an attorney and then became a minister with a Presbyterian church, and then later on drifted out of that, not drifted, very purposely went into life coaching, especially for men trying to detoxify themselves and the world around them. And even acting again. I called him a good friend. The early days of my blog and videos, like 2008, 2009, in the depths of not a damn thing happening with Star Trek, aside from this movie we heard about, but nothing for active people to get involved with. And at the very dawn of the social media age, right? 07, 08, 09, Curtis Webster here in the Valley was a minister at Encino, was it? Reseda? And he had a dictate from me. He was a young to them. It was an older aged mainstream Protestant church, and they wanted to expand their audience. And he was a huge Trek fan. It was also the church that Mike Westmore attended. And the think tank of what transpired was that he came up with a series called The Spirit of Star Trek. Once a month on a Sunday evening, they had really nice projection facilities in their sanctuary, in their main auditorium. And once a month, he had an actual professional Star Trek guest come in. They screened an episode that was available on, DVD. Screened an episode with a person who was involved in it. And I know he started with Mike Westmore, but over time he had Armin, Max, Who else? Nana, Bob Picardo, Ethan Phillips. At one point, had my friend James Kerwin and Chase Masterson with their movie Yesterday Was a Lie. And then a second one, I think, with just Chase. And myself as a guest once. But I was really big in the early days. We did advanced video. We did a little video teaser for them. I really went because I was thrilled something was happening in the world, in a world of dead Star Trek, dead live event Star Trek. It was a godsend. And the discussions after the screening were always really insightful. And that happened over 2, 3, 4 years. Finally kind of ran out of steam. Apparently the church decided that wasn't exactly how they wanted to expand their base, and Curtis went to another church, did that a little bit more, but then decided that maybe this was not going to be as fulfilling and life-affirming for himself, and went into personal coaching and did that for several years and built a practice and built some events, and then did some acting along the way. And if you look up Curtis Webster's IMDb, you'll see he had a lot of the judge, general, police chief. He had that look. I was just thinking in the last month or two that I needed to call him. I hadn't talked to him in years and years and years. And he wrote a book about his interesting relationship with one of his adopted kids. His wife, Kay, died 2 or 3 years ago when I think that's the last time I even just texted with him. And apparently he passed very suddenly and unexpectedly. I've not heard the details. I hope there's a memorial service or remembrance service coming up. I feel really bad that I did not circle back around and catch up with him in these last 10, 15 years. It's one of those times that makes you stop and think. Who are you in touch with that you really ought to be in touch with? Who are the folks you haven't just spoken to in a long time that you probably that were once close to or worked with a lot that you enjoyed, and maybe it's time to check in on them. It's one of those times it's a little bit of a wake-up call to do that. So here's to you, Curtis. I hope there'll be some more chances to think about them. A lot of people that were entertained, a lot of people that he helped along the way. And I want to be in that circle when there's some memorying going down. But I say this not to derail, not to get off track from this topic today. Because yes, last week we talked about these are kind of quiet times for Trek. Khan had its penultimate, that's the fancy word for next to the last, chapter out. We'll wrap up next week. Then we have a wait until now mid-January for Starfleet Academy. Finally, we get to traipse through the holidays, all of that. But it's still relatively a quiet time. And yet in the quiet, last week, just about the time you think everything is about the future, it's all about the future, here comes somebody to send you a red alert, send you a code 1 that apparently there was history that you all thought everybody knew, and apparently some people didn't get the memo. Now, silly me for saying this when apparently we live in a world where a third of our country apparently never studied history either. But that's where we are. This is just Star Trek, kids. No, I'm talking about, apparently, do I even mention where it came from? Enough people have mentioned that. So Giant Freaking Robot, one of their writers, basically somewhere included a screed about how Star Trek is so woke today because there's all these wannabe fake faux geek girls that are acting like they're in fandom and they're not, and any guy knows who's really been around. He said, look at any online comment thread and you won't see any women, any females. So I saw that somebody commented on that and kind of made fun of it. Not in a mean way, just an eye-rolling way, like 5 days ago, 5-6 days ago, just as it flew through the air. And I went, oh boy, what a wackadoodle one-off. must have been a clickbaiter just trying to get people who aren't used to the field of fandom Star Trek, right? Like, who would? Because kids, it rang a bell for me. It rang a deja vu bell. We went through this 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I was astounded, flabbergasted, flummoxed, eye-rolling, ridiculing in the early aughts because this movement arose, which totally threw me because of, facts and easily provable facts, photo evidence. But still, there were a lot of new people in fandom, which I thought at the time Star Trek's fandom was sliding off anyway because the numbers were split and declining on Enterprise, the viewership. And there was kind of a malaise settling in, especially after Nemesis did not do well. And especially after Enterprise started to stagnate with its ratings. So there was a little bit of malaise, and some of the vultures were circling we didn't have toxic tubers yet, but the toxicists, and just people from neighboring fandoms that thought they knew something. But somewhere along the way, this started to grow. There was the geek girl movement happened, and then there was this pushback that they were the fake geek girls, because how could they? They just want to, two things: cosplay as a term, much less a thing, general fandom, and then the cosplay that it kind of from anime world was starting to come mainstream. And it was coming mainstream and going into sci-fi conventions and actually starting to bolster the Comic-Con convention, the old school Comic-Con, the old ones, the original ones, like Mile High in Denver, but especially San Diego Comic-Con. And before the huge blow up 6, 7, 8 years later, right, with Twilight and the MCU coming along, but right on the cusp of that, people who went to Comic-Cons were seeing this infusion of women with the anime costumes primarily at the beginning and accusing them all of just being models and faux, fake geek girls. That was the term. Fangirls. Okay, where did you come from? You can't be. You're just wearing costumes. Which was ridiculous. It's a new phenomenon that's just happened here. And it's like, no, it's just a new phenomenon because you woke up to it. You may be resenting it. You don't know how to process this because in your little world. But if I can't speak for all of sci-fi-ness, but I know what happened in Star Trek. And you're thinking, well, Dorothy Fontana was there. And well, yes, but I'm talking about in the fandom. I'm talking about in the fandom. Does somebody not know about the history of Spock and Vulcans and the early fan fiction and fanzine movement was 80% women, especially the movers and shakers that set up the clubs and the awards and the cons to give out the awards? Does anybody know? Ta-da, I brought props today. Does anybody not know what the con committee for the original New York Save Star Trek conventions look like? I mean, I'm like, what? Well, there's George. I see one guy here surrounded by all women. This is the con committee for the 70. This is the 74. This is the third one. Look, I'm going to go off on this tear a little bit, gang, because I'm just so flabbergasted. Here's a slightly less quality photo, same moment, a little bit differently, but you get an even bigger. I think there's a couple of guys back here in the back, but this is Elise Pines down here. That might be Joan. Anyway, I'm just, it's there. We have photo evidence. I know it was the 70s. I know that's been 50 years now, but if you're going to call yourself enough of a Trek fan to prognosticate and pontificate on it and punditize, then you got to know what you're talking about. No, look, I'm used to those debates, for years about, Star Trek is too woke. Where have you been all your life? Did you watch the show? You're used to that kind of popping up and going, what? And I remember hearing that in the 80s, the Reagan 80s, Star Trek did go a little more conservative with all the militaristic bling on the uniforms when Harv was running. Nothing against Harv, but things were very Reagan-esque with the original series movies. Not the motion picture. That was pure Gene. The wacky doodle Gene stuff. But I'm talking about, a little Admiral on the Bridge. That was never part of the 60s show. And then Gene had a chance to maybe course correct a little bit. Although I know Admiral on the Bridge got said starting third season. I can still see Nakamura being said for him. But I'm used to that debate. And that's one that keeps popping up it's ongoing. It's silly. But you can constantly, and whenever Star Trek gets into a new radar, falls on somebody's scope, like the beginning of Discovery did big time, and people get their feathers ruffled because they think they think it's all space battles and pew-pew. Really? No. That's a debate I'm used to having. I'm also used to this whole, the faux geek girls are just popping up to cosplay and pop in from anime world into everything else. I'm used to that 25 years ago. I'm not used to it now. But the Thursday, I'll say, when I saw this, I made a couple of comments. I moved on. Like, how ridiculous. Do you not know where zines came from? Fan fiction for Star Trek? Do you not know who split off fandom off of generic sci-fi litcons as far as big organizations? Do you not know who was running, aside from Al Schuster, who did the huckster's room, as they used to call it, in the East anyway? It was always the dealers to us. And then split off later on, and when all the con wars started to set in. Aside from him, most of the vast leadership was like you saw in that photo from the third one. But even beyond that, you think about the conventions, the lightning rod, where you really get into the moments. And yes, I'm going back to the early days, because we talk about this on the Trek Files at times. It pops up, but there's a paper and stamps day event before the internet. The internet with ink and paper and stamps and SACES, self-addressed stamped envelopes, were the currency of fandom, thanks to a little thing that Star Trek fandom demanded. Nothing had ever been seen like this before in another paradigm, which was people wanted information. They wanted information. They wanted connections. They wanted addresses. In a world where you didn't email even, you just could call or write. Yes, I'm talking about the Well Committee. Here's a standard Well Committee flyer. This is from 84. They were always updated. Look at all those services there. See? The directory of Star Trek organizations, very big without an internet. How could you find out what was going on around the country? And dealers and clubs and conventions, okay? Pamphlet called How to Start a Club. Pamphlet called Protocols. Just the way that writers, artists, readers, editors should all interact with each other. The fans, little golden guide to throwing your own con. History of the Star Trek Well Committee. Yeah, you had it. So you want publicity. And the Star Trek slide cassette show available for loan. Somebody came up with one. Services, the area list department. Again, for a list of fans in your area. Yep. Books in and out of print. Okay. College and library programming. Convention listing coordinator. List your convention, right? Editors and contributors exchange. The foreign department. Military fan liaison. Library computer general just answers your trivia questions. That's what I wound up being the last 10 years. Library computer science and technology, the really hardcore science and tech stuff that you might have had a question. News clipping service. News clips from all over the country before you could share them online. Pen pal department, pretty simple. Space and future resources. The Star Trek educational programming's a department for teachers. Yep. Zine acquisition consultant for suggestions and information on where to obtain imprint fanzines and what types are available. Zine publishing information, like how-tos about how to publish your own zine. And the chairman. Do you want me to list? Do you want me to tell you who was running all these departments? Well, here, why don't I get the late 80s Star Trek Well Committee roster? Who's the chairman? Well, For the last 30 years it existed, 20 to 30 years, it was Grandma Star Trek, Shirley Mayuski. Yep, from Hatfield, Massachusetts. Her aide was Carol Rasmussen. The vice chairman was Allison Dyer. The old original Star Trek advisors from the founding days, Helen Young and Jacqueline Lichtenberg, who's been a guest on the Trek Files. The mailroom. People wrote their letters in, and who sent them out to the VWs, the volunteer workers, to be like me, to be answered? Why, that was Mary Lou Dodge. Yes, of course it was. The finance department, the volunteer. Okay, Richard Watson. This list of names, many of which are repeated. Richard is one of 4 men on this list. I'm just saying. Under the finance committee, book sales, Kay Johnson. Donated items for auctions, for fundraising, for operations here. Who's that? Oh, Frank Hitchcock with an assistant, Vicky Caffey. Supplies department chief, Joan Marie Verba. Con arrangements, right? Interacting with cons for things. East Coast, Shirley. Midwest, Joyce Thompson in Denver, Kansas City. And West Coast, Lisa Wall. Legal advisor, the attorney, if they needed legal help, Ellen Kozak. Directory publisher, the publisher of this sucker. They made it on yellow paper at first because they could call it the Yellow Pages of Fandom. This was your directory of organizations, dealers, clubs, cons, addresses, phone numbers. It was updated maybe at least once a year, maybe more than that. Even games. There's professional Star Trek magazines and books listed in here until they got too long to go. And of course, there's the good old Well Committee patches that were sold for fundraising. This came out about every once a year. They would put it on colored paper. And of course, it would mail to you because we were in paper and stamps days. Look. Okay. That was hugely. Am I beating the drum here too much? Let's look at some of the other departments here on this list. This is the 1984. Been around for 7-8 years. Had another 20 years to go. Directory editor, Judy Siegel. Okay, her staff assistants were Lloyd Penny and Robert Friel. Okay, editor and publisher, Shirley Mayuski. The business manager for the newsletter was Mary Manchester, sorry. Just going down here, the area list, Barbara Mayuski. Club consultant, Joyce Thompson. College and library programming, Sandy Sapatka. Con consultants, Lori Chapek Carlton. Yes. A lot of the names are starting to repeat here. Foreign departments, Australia, Jerry France. Diane Merchant. Germany, Sandy Sapatka. Military base American. Great Britain, Carla Salveda in Scotland. The Japan entry was empty at the moment. Military fan liaison, Sandy Sapatka. Yeah, historian, Joan Verba. Library computer general, that's the trivia answering person, Don Harden. Good guy, good fan. The science and tech library computer answerer person, Thomas Monson. I've now read you all the men's names on this list, on this long legal size list. And the rest of them, people running other departments that are small, it's repeating of all the names you've heard already. Allison, Joan Marie, Joyce. This is 70s and 80s. This is 84. We were 3 original series movies in. Star Trek fandom did its job and saved a show to live and fight another day and entertain and inspire others. We're 2 years away from announcing the next generation here. These are the movers and shakers of fandom. Now look, there are clubs. There's chapters of Starfleet. There are chapters of STAR, the original Star Trek Association for Revival. There's lots of, I'm not saying men were absent, but it's like, look at this inverse. For anybody, I don't care what year it is. Number one, it's just wrong. Number two, do your research. None of this stuff is hidden anywhere in the back of a black cave. This didn't go down a rat hole, this information. The photos are there. Have you seen the costume contests from the 70s? Oh my God, everybody is getting off on Bill Tice. It's barely hanging their costumes. There's tons of women. There's always been tons of women, and even old school lit fandom. But these are the little busybodies that would not take no for an answer. And when they couldn't assimilate the mainstream litcons, when they were kind of gatekeeped out at the beginning and said, well, just if you're not going to go read your classics and assimilate and learn everything, just maybe you should go off and do your own Star Trek convention by yourself, which is what they did. And you saw the results. And that led to the Comic-Con fandom we have today. Media cons, because eventually you had Star Wars and you had everything else on TV, and you didn't need just Star Trek, although that was the driving force. You weren't going to get the regular cast of Star Wars at a con. And there were only 2 hours of it, or 4 hours, or 6 hours when you have all of this of Trek. Yeah, the Comic-Con movement goes back to Star Trek fandom, Star Trek's women con-throwing fandoms splitting off and being brave enough to have just a Star, which was unprecedented at the time. But then it was also unprecedented to have anything on a screen that people felt like following that wasn't an anthology. It wasn't a one-off movie. It wasn't an anthology, Twilight Zone. It was actually regular characters in a regular story ongoing. It never happened before. Sorry, Lost in Space. We went through this idiocracy 25 years ago. Why anyone? You can say it was clickbait, Larry. It was just clickbait. But I wonder, because it wouldn't be the first time that the thing that we all thought, we all knew, because we lived it, we saw it with our own eyes, we heard it with our own ears, we read about it, we had parents, we had grandparents, passed it down, direct line of story. Am I talking about economics going in and out of the Depression, or am I talking about Star Trek history? Oh, maybe both. You're talking about who we fought in World War II and why, and what the Cold War was supposedly about, even us with all of our flaws. Whatever, you want it the meta scale, the macro or the micro. Apparently, that's a human nature thing. It just, maybe it's not quite just a matter of life and death when it's only Star Trek, but it sure as hell is annoying. I thought, I mean, I'm used to this whole, Star Trek's too woke. So, that thing has gone on for ages. It pops up. I guess it's a sign that you're alive. If you're dead, no one cares. So yay, Star Trek for being around 60 years. For this to have been debated the last 40 of it. But really? Really? There's no women in the comment sections online? Buddy, this isn't about Trek. It's not about the women fans. It's not about most fans. It's about you. It's like, you need to get out of the house a little more. You need to get out of your little bubble online. How do the artists and creatives and organizers, guys, I didn't even mention Bijo running the frickin' with John, who gets overlooked, who we lost about 3 years ago, the Trimbles. I hadn't even mentioned Bijo and the frickin' letter drive that got a third season that made 3 years of reruns possible for syndicated stations to pick up the thing. I mean, this is all ancient history. We love to talk about it. It's recorded. It comes up every third or fourth episode of the Trek Files. It's part of our storied, glorious heritage that made Star Trek, and not just its fandom, but the created Star Trek what it is, that interaction. Gene did not go away silently into the night when he was demoted because he knew he could leverage that fandom out there. And Harv Bennett and Paramount knew it too. You better believe it. And everybody since, if they're smart, and Harv Bennett was smart, Rick Berman was mostly smart, although he may have settled into the ruts a little bit there toward the end. But anybody who has been a showrunner or in charge and it's been a success is well aware of the fandom. and well aware of the makeup and doesn't fall for just the pew pew boys. Not after the glorious heritage that this fandom has had. And yeah, I'll say it. I'm thankful. I know what I knew I was a minority in Interstat. A lot of those names I read off who were bigwigs in fan fiction, in the fan fiction world and zine world, and the organizers of the Well Committee, which again came out of a desire to spread information about zines and publishing your own zine, because that was how fans found each other. That was the calling card before we had instant communication, whatever you were doing, whether it was email or you were tweeting. That's how you, and then you would meet at cons and you would link up that way. And you would hear your gossip at cons and all of that. Because it still was 3 or 4 or 5 days for a letter. And oh my God, long distance calling was so expensive. Did you want to get up before 8 a.m. to get the overnight long distance rate so you could call LA from New York? Oklahoma sure wasn't calling Jeff Mandel in New York City. That was way too in college. Are you kidding me? I know it was another time, another place, but that doesn't negate the history that we have and still have. Have you looked at the podcast hosts? We had Women at War. We have Sci-Fi Sisters and an RIP for Sabrina. I think I mentioned losing her a couple of weeks ago. What rock did this guy live under? Now, to the other 99.9% of fandom's credit, I decided to talk about this today because past that little Thursday flyby, I saw it popping up more and more, and people commenting on it. And again, maybe I was in my bubble. Maybe I live in a big bubble. I'd like to think it's 90% of fandom. That's a big bubble to be in. But everybody, every time I would see it popping up, it was because somebody had reposted it to go, WTF? what, like, guy, what? Yeah, what black hole have you pioneered? Everybody was somewhere on the spectrum of ridiculing to just factually drowning the little, and it was always, if you notice, people very smartly started propagating his comments, his little 2 paragraphs, as a copy, not as a direct link. He wasn't getting all this. You weren't getting the benefit of all the linkage. It was just a screen cap. And the name was not there, but the source was. And I kept seeing it pop up over and over and over again as we got to Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday. And with everything else going on in the world, this was like a constant online for several days. Did you see it in any of your places? Right? Primarily Twitter, Blue Sky, maybe Facebook, probably Facebook. And finally, I saw my buddy Dayton Ward repost it and let another slew of people, following his page, Facebook, I think, comment and ridicule and eye roll but really head scratch and go, as I did, really? It's 2025. Really? And if nothing else, you wonder, was it really just paid trolling, paid clickbait? Or was that a sincere thought? Now look, I'm all for anybody saying what they want to say. First Amendment, I'm not going to gatekeep anybody. It's not even debate. How is it even a debate? I'm sorry. Here's the 82,000 facts I have. Boom. And your fact is you don't see many females in comment sections. Well, where do you hang out? That's just the most simplistically basic of illogical structure, supposition. Therefore, what a false society. Okay, we can go down the line spot. But by the time I had seen it popping up randomly, I had commented twice in different streams on Thursday. I was done. But I kept seeing it popping up and other people commenting. And of course, the original poster wanted to pull it up and put it on their page for people to see. Everybody felt like ridiculing this. But we live in a time when just because everybody, I don't mean bubble people, I mean apparently, factually, numerically, with data, if we can get it, everybody or a vast majority thinks it's crazy, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Doesn't it mean that there's a force and a power behind it? So thank you, Dayton, because when I saw you reposting it and I saw everybody reacting to it, well, not only fresh, like, oh no, this is the 19th time I've seen this, but people reacting for the first time and uniformly, nobody steps up and says, oh gosh, I've wondered this myself. Where are you all getting this information that you're countering him with? No. I finally said, okay, heaven forbid I ever thought this would be something on the level of I don't know, a Trekland Tuesdays live topic, but maybe it'll do some good somewhere, somehow, even if it's just another YouTube headline that flickers by when somebody that needs to see it, it might cross their little visual path, or on Facebook even. And yes, I'll admit it's a slow time. I didn't have anything else to talk about, but maybe this is one of those cases where the ripple effect is the most important thing, where the little bitty pebble that you throw that makes little bitty ripples, you don't know how far they go. That little bitty butterfly, its effect, you never know. And I do not understand what the downside of pointing out the accurate history of, you could debate the quantity of impact. You could debate Gene Roddenberry was a guy, Gene Kuhn was a guy, John Trimble was a guy. I mean, you can, Al Schuster was on the, you can quantify impact, but to say they weren't there, and it wasn't just, cosplay modeling. In the years before we had the word, you were going in costume. You were in the masquerade contest. Yeah, that anime crossover bleed over early aughts years was the first time I heard I thought cosplay was when you not only wore a costume, but you role played in it like all day. Like you went to a con, you went as this character, and you not only did a really awesome job as that character, but then you role played the character all day. Because why else would it be cosplay? I thought it was a bump up of the two. What's that? The P word. Within a few months, I found out that I was off base because I noticed all these people cosplaying and they were just being themselves. I'm like, you're not role playing very well if that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're dropping it constantly. But at that time and space, there was a lot of this pushback by people that apparently just woke up the day before and had no clue. And 25 years ago, we were only 30 years out from all of this. So that's a generation. Were kids not kids paying attention? Did they not have parents? Okay, maybe they didn't have fan parents. Maybe they just crawled out from under their gaming rock and had no clue. Well, you know what? We have this thing now called the internet, where pictures and articles and stories and history and commentary is very easy to get. But why would someone be spewing words visually on a quasi-recognized platform? And I know a lot of you are saying, Larry, why are you paying attention to one of those news sites, one of those tubers? And I know 99% of the time we don't. But this one appeared to catch fire, catch traction, and lots of people, just like me, would say, from Dayton on down, how ridiculous. We all know this isn't true. here are the basic facts staring us in the face. Then and now. What? What? Really? From Bijo on down. But maybe sometimes it's good, to get the receipts. Maybe sometimes it's good to get things out. Once again, thank you, Well Committee, for being the internet of stamps and paper, because Star Trek demanded it. And there was no digital linkage internet thing around to help us in the 70s and the 80s and even into the 90s. The Well Committee finally dried up in the early aughts, maybe because, the internet had totally made it a relic. But it was glorious in the day, and it was a complete example of a grassroots response to a passion that a growing number of people had that blew up over 20, 30 years. Somebody needs to do a documentary or a history of the Well Committee. And I mean more than Joan Marie Verba's pamphlet from back in the day. We've lost a lot of the folks of that era. We do what we can to remember them in the Trek files or other places. Boy, I just, there's so many great women podcasters and tubers now, live streamers. You reveal a lot about yourself when you plunge out with something that clearly was not researched. It just shows that, and fine, if you live in a little world, don't pretend to write if you're not going to at least try to recognize that you live in a little world and you want to go research something bigger than the history of my little world. Guys, I'm sorry if I got wound up there. Well, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry if that all seemed like ancient history. Why are you going over it? There's something I learned a long time ago. I thought so much of what I have been through was old, dusty history, only to turn around and read online where people have no clue. When it's factual facts about how Star Trek was made or something about the people or credit where credit's due or not due, that's one thing. I get that. But some of these foundational basics, it's like if somebody had written Star Trek was never on a national network. How did it get so popular? It's like, what? Something is based. Star Trek never had a major studio behind it. How did it get to be this underground cult thing? I'm like, that's the equivalent here. Anyway, so here we are on a Tuesday's live. I got that out of my system. I could not believe this was happening. I knew it came from one of those clickbaity, stupid sources. I'm not talking so much about the source. I'm talking about how it seemed to trigger something with everyone who's felt the need to comment. Now, whether they just blended into the background because that's what half our world is these days, or stupid people writing things online that are easily proven to be false, whether it was yesterday, much less 30 years ago or 50 years ago, or whether it was people just felt the need to pontificate and spew because there might be some innocents out there that really don't know. And that's what I've caught myself assuming everyone knew something when they didn't. That's why I try to do what I do. It's whether it's a picayune, cool little making of bit from an episode or a person, and we do that in Portal, or it's something from history that we do in Trek Files, or something of a common nature here that we're doing here today. So, maybe we've helped with a little butterfly effect somewhere. Maybe we've helped with a little ripple effect of awareness and knowledge for a young mind that sincerely didn't know, because that older idiot should really know better. Is either really ignorant or it's so insanely clickbait it just makes me want to regulate the internet, which is a horrible thing to say. I'm just glad that the mass reaction that I saw over several days, uniformly, people know what the reality is. If they're online And you know what? What's funny is many of the reactions were coming from women. Imagine women commenting in comment threads in the social media sphere about Trek. Who'd have thunk? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, get me out of here. Sweet Kalis and the Prophets too. Good Lord. Okay. I think it's time, gang, that we take our YouTube break. Because I want to say, if you're watching on YouTube later, thank you. We're going to get into the comments here in a minute live. But hey, you could still keep this going. I would love to see men and women commenting on this later on YouTube about this whole wacky do thing. I mean, did this, how we have the things that pop up and they kind of cross over. They cross everyone's field of vision on social media, right? They just kind of come up and then they pass after a few days. It's just sometimes what it is that passes by that it seems like everyone sees and a lot of people comment on, for good, bad, or ugly. It's just earth-shakingly mind-numbing. And yeah, SMH for sure. Have you had a moment like that with this one? I'd love to hear it in the topic in the comments later on. And hey, if you are watching us later, it would be great if you could maybe join us live on a Tuesday afternoon sometime. You're off work, maybe it's a holiday week. You're always invited. I'm here most every Tuesday of the year. Some weeks we have to jumble that a little bit to another day, but just pretty much all the time here on Tuesday afternoons. But of course, I can't leave anywhere without saying a big thank you to our October Patreon folk. Now, this is the list. I will update this. We've got some new folks for November. We'll have them on here. But let me just finish up by saying thank you so much, TTLers, Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Halbert Gunjanssen, Lawrence Todd, Chris Jiggins, Mitch Keith, Keith Rombach, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, and Comedy Forecast. And then our live wires. Yep, that's J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, Donna S. Runyon, Brandon Coles, Dave Gregory, Jesse at Crusher Convo, Chris Garris, and Casey Shafsky. That's our Patreons, our TTLers, and you can be one too. It's very simple. I keep it simple and small. It's $5 for the shout out, $10 for the shout out, plus the access to older portal. And it's another week has gone by and I haven't refreshed that. So it's patreon.com/Trekland Live. Very simple. Hey, I think you can get yourself to Doug's Kickstarter and maybe have a couple of bucks left over from me. But, wait till next month if you have to. His is only going 30 days. I would love it if everybody could come. Thank you so much for the support here, though. It helps with all the streaming that we do. I got to get Cadet Alice back, and we need to do some more of Poor Season 2, because I have this feeling that Prodigy's going to not so much get renewed anytime soon, if ever, but just feels like there's a little bit of a circle of attention coming around to Prodigy. I don't know. Anyway, once again, a shout out. If this intrigues you for the 60th, if you're trying to celebrate in a big, unique, custom way, take the 5-day trip with us the week before Vegas, whether you go to the con or not. The sights, it's amazing. Nothing like being there in person, and the fans that you will make, the friends that you make along the way. Yeah, it's a real tour. We stay together in hotel. We have the buses and the vans, all of that. Trekland Treks is a one-day tour that I offer any time of year whenever you have a day free in Los Angeles from work or pleasure on vacay. So get in touch with me at LarryNemecek.com about that. Yeah. But it's a Tuesday, and that means it's yet another Trek Files from Roddenberry, the Trek Files, I should say, wherever fine podcasts are caught, roddenberry.podcast or podcast.roddenberry.com or thetrekfiles.com on Memory Alpha. This week, it's if you were at cons in the 80s and 90s and you saw Majel at her table, next to her would have been Raina, who started off being Rod's nanny when he was 6 months old and wound up being Raina Estepanian, wound up running Lincoln Enterprises, overseeing the warehousing and the mailing, going with Majel to cons as her table mate, and just a good friend. all of that. Raina is our guest this week, and it's a very personal look at traveling to cons and tabling and running Lincoln Enterprises with Majel. And I don't know if she's ever done an interview and sat down with anyone like that before, but you should make sure and give it a check. That's the Trek Files gang. And of course, if you want to, we're still on Facebook, but if you really want to be in the community, we have founded using the Roddenberry Mission Log Discord, which you get to by Patreon. Their Patreon, it's $1 a month, different than mine. $1 a month gets you access to all of the message boards, support boards, community boards, and the live shows connected to all the Roddenberry podcasts and a few others. Every other Tuesday, 4 p.m. at 4 p.m. on Mondays, every other Monday, we have Trekophiles Tonight. I would love for you to join us there. And that's going to do it. That's going to do it, gang. I'm Larry Nemecek on X and Blue Sky. You can catch us, Larry's Trekland, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. All of that is there. Portal47.net. If you just want to jump in full bore and go behind the scenes with the Portales and me, with our guests, with our Ask Dr. Trek Roundtable, every month of the year, there is no chance for post-con blues. Would love for you to jump in. This is the 10th anniversary year. We are tentatively setting the open house now for November 12th. More info is coming on that. It'll be quick and short and sweet, but plenty of time for everybody to get there. I promise you. That's going to do it. That's going to do it. 10 years of Portal 47. Wow. 10 years since we started the Geek Nation tours, big LA to Vegas tour. And I really do appreciate everybody being here with us these weeks. Okay, that's going to do it. On watching us later, please, please, please stay healthy, do all the things. Stay awoke, check your sources, as I was saying earlier. And yeah, trek well, everybody.